You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania.
Voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John show, yeah. It's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John show, the finest in the land.
It's our Friday morning intro. Normally I try to hit Fridays hard because it's the best day of the week, right, John?
That's exactly right. And you and I are going to meet up at Northdale Market on Larimore Road, and then we're going to ride our bikes to Sierra Vista right after school today, right, Brad?
Can we have dinner at Ponticello's?
We're going to go to I'm more of a Solos guy than Ponticello's, but we can do it. We can flip a coin. We'll flip a 1976. What was the name of that? A Liberty Quarter. We'll see.
I beat you to it, John, as far as the intro there. That's my favorite, and we have one of our listeners who's that's one of her favorite intros as well, too. Now, on with the show. I sound like Casey Kasem when he says things like...
We're on our way to the number one.
That's what he says. That is John Combest, Combest. Check out his website, johncombest.com. Every single day of the week, he puts together a list of all sorts of links on his website, sort of like a Missouri Drudge Report kind of thing, where no fancy graphics, no fancy flashing banners, no women in scantily clad clothing or anything like that. He is just a meat and potatoes kind of guy. He puts together this list every day. We condense it. I was going to say conceal it. That wouldn't make any sense. We condense it down to the top 3. And on Fridays, we bring in Bubba and the boys who play...
Time for the John Combest Top 3.
And that is the John Combest Top 3. And we bring in this guy. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what do you do again?
Now on with the countdown.
As soon as the polka boys finish, we'll get down. Okay, now it's waited for John. John?
In third place.
Brad, it looks like we're going to have to put to rest a controversy that's been lingering around the edges of Missouri politics for years, and that is the issue of Josh Hawley's residency. Do you remember the storyline, Brad?
Yes. He, according to the state constitution, the attorney general must live in. They had to live in Jefferson City. It wasn't necessarily Cole County, wasn't it? Actually, physically had to live in Jefferson City, wasn't that the deal?
I don't know. I thought it was Cole County. Now this is beyond that, but continue that recap real quick before we get into the news.
Well, the attorney general, who is supposed to enforce the laws, and once again, this is in the Missouri Constitution, if I'm not mistaken, correctly? That's in the
Correct.
Constitution. He just essentially thumbed his nose to the Missouri Constitution and said, I don't care what it says, I'm going to live in Boone County. Wasn't that the gist of the conversation or the gist of the situation?
I think he had a little lean-to in a van down by the river. But as it relates to Missouri, and more recently, representing Missouri in the U.S. Senate, the Kansas City Star has gone out and looked at property records. And Brad, you can almost hear the disdain and sadness in their voice when the Kansas City Star is reporting today that it appears as though Josh Hawley has 2 residences in Christian County, which is down in southwest Missouri. So he had said for a long time, I should say for years now, that he was having a house built. He ended up having a house built down there. Now, Brad, what's unclear from the Kansas City Star reporting, or what I couldn't interpret from it, it appeared as though one of these might be in a trust. So I couldn't gather whether Josh's parents are still around, whether he's putting his parents up in a house. I don't know if his parents are still alive or not. But it appeared as though this would seem to suggest that either his parents had a home, or he bought a home, an additional home, and put it in a trust. But anyway, he had his own house built in Christian County. He also owns a home in Virginia, which was why a lot of controversy, and Democrats were complaining about stuff for years about the fact that he allegedly didn't really live in Missouri. But Brad, I guess it's timely as he takes his steps in his cakewalk reelection. We can finally put the residency issue to bed.
Well, you know, what's sad about this is, let's be honest, most of the people who are congressmen and senators, they don't really live in their districts anymore. They live in D.C.
Many of them, yeah. I think it's fair to say that many of them don't live in the district anymore.
Wasn't that the story? Was it the weird story? Was it the, who's the dude from California who was prosecuting Trump and all who's running for Senate in California?
Oh, yeah. His name escaped. Was it Schiff?
Yeah, Adam Schiff. Okay, was it the story that he had a home like in Maryland, and when he applied for a loan, he wrote down, or he was refinancing his loan, and he wrote down his primary residence was in Maryland.
It's pretty ridiculous. And I mean, you know, logistically, you have to have somewhere within the Beltway to lay your head at night. Jim Talent, Congressman. Famously, Brad, he didn't advertise this, so I shouldn't say famously, but he slept in his office. Well, he was so cheap.
He's not the only one.
Yeah, and he used the house gym and the house restroom facilities, and he didn't have until he was a member of the Senate. I don't believe he ever had a place in Washington, D.C.
Well, there are other ones as well, too. I've read other stories about guys. And you know what? What's wrong with that? You know, I mean, I
think it's terrific. Why not use the facilities, Brad?
Right. Taxpayers are paying for them. Might as well use them, right? You know, was that the end of
That's the end of story number 3.
And by the way, I have a Bill Eigel update if you want to.
Oh, I can't wait to hear.
Another Bill Eigel update. Okay, here we go to
up a notch to number 2.
One of our greatest policy legacies on the show, Brad, is you and I relentlessly campaigning to not just have winning for Missouri education as it relates to sports betting and helping students, but also, Brad, we had meth for math, right? We have escorts for education.
Right.
Brad, I want you to hold the phone on mushrooms for math, though, because there seems to be a little bit of opposition to magic mushrooms, aka psilocybin, as a treatment, as a replacement for opioids. Ben Baker, a state representative from Neosho, Missouri, in the southwest part of the state, was on KZRG's Morning News Watch. And Ben was asked about immigration issues, a lot of the things that Ben's involved with. And then the host happened to ask Ben Baker what he thought about the idea of magic mushrooms, because, you know, this is floated every year, and the idea of replacing opioids with this type of treatment. And Ben Baker is not a fan of magic mushrooms. And Ben Baker says, I mean, this is almost a Brad Hildebrand type of argument, that this type of treatment is more about money than it is about helping people who need to get off of opioids. Ben Baker's point is that if you look at a lot of faith-based programs, according to Ben Baker, they have a better rate of success than any sort of open drug environment where we're allowing things like, you know, whether a Portland example of hard drugs or whether something like mushrooms. Now, I'm not an expert on that data. I happen to have probably a bit more of an open mind about it, in terms of thinking, if you could replace somehow some kind of opioid treatments with a really strictly controlled psilocybin prescription market, I think we should look at that. But anyway, Brad, I bring this up too because this reinforces one of your points about the law of unintended consequences. And you've taught us a lot about this over the last 10 months of the show. And here's my theory, Brad. I think a lot of state legislators, Democrat and Republican, would be more open to psilocybin research if we happen to be able to look at the marijuana program and say, hey, this wasn't just run by the marijuana industry. This thing is, you know, free and fair and open. Maybe we should consider that model for magic mushrooms. But the point is, Brad, the law of unintended consequences says when you look at the way that the marijuana program has been implemented and how many challenges there have been in that, I don't know if state legislators are going to open their arms to psilocybin research.
Well, you don't want my opinion on this because to me, it's the slippery slope. Once again, it's the classic incrementalism. Well, if that's okay, let's try this. You know what I
mean? Yeah. And by the way, I think, and you and I might disagree on this. We might differ on this, but I know that there have been a number of studies done or being done right now at Washington University and looking at the effect of psilocybin on PTSD and folks who have really serious psychological challenges. And I definitely think the state should condone that. I think that research is valuable. And I think objectively, it looks like there have been some real positive results coming from that. But there's a big difference, I think, between that and saying, hey, next year, let's pass a psilocybin bill that goes way too far. You get what I'm saying?
I do, but you know what the problem with that is? Then you get then you get on a slippery slope of you have guys like Tim Walz come forward and say, yeah, I've got PTSD when I was assigned to Italy during my combat tour.
Actually, he was in Tiananmen Square the first time he went on a mushroom trip.
Boy, I tell you what, is he getting roasted for? I mean, even the Dems, I read a couple interesting things. Even the Democrats are going like, that was not his finest hour when he was asked that question directly, and he gave the bizarre, weird, strange, a minute and a half dissertation of all sorts of crap that made no sense at all. And then, I can't remember which one it was, one of the moderators, she just said, sir, you didn't answer the question, and she throws it back at him, and he's, blah, blah, blah. I'm a knucklehead. Matter of fact, I got to pull that quote. That's got to be.
We should use that as a drop.
That's got to be one of our drops.
You know who's not a knucklehead?
Who's that?
The star of story number one today.
And who would that be?
The number one.
We can cap the week with a feel-good story, Brad. Sometimes in our top three, we talk about corruption and graft and all the nonsense that goes on in Missouri politics. This is a really good story about a local boy done good. Many people who were involved in Missouri politics, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're familiar with Matt Jessee. Matt Jessee was one of the founders of what was first known as Bryan Cave Strategies, which was Bryan Cave's lobbying and political consultancy, I guess you could call it, policy advisors. And they became BCLP, so Bryan Cave, Leighton Posner. And anyway, Matt Jessee has had a long, successful run there, and he is coming home, Brad. He is now the head of government affairs and external affairs, I hope I get that title right, at Missouri American Water. So Matt has been involved in the community for a long time. We'll keep it to the professional stuff, but I will mention that many of his philanthropic efforts with the June Jessee Foundation. You can take your kids to the June Jessee playground, which is right by Parkway West. My kids loved that playground when they were super little. Anyway, this story I should highlight is brought to us by Politico. The national publication mentioned Matt Jessee and his job, his new role at Missouri American Water. Many folks will remember this. The job was previously held by a woman named Christine Page. So this is a little bit of insider talk, Brad. But Christine Page ran that shop for a long time. And according to her LinkedIn, she is now semi-retired, and she's on the board of Missouri American Water. But this is great news for Matt Jessee. And I also bring this up, Brad, because for many years, Matt Jessee was known as Jack Oliver's guy. Do you recognize the name Jack Oliver?
I do.
So Jack Oliver, as you probably remember, Brad, was the fundraiser for George W. Bush starting in like 98 all through the presidential run. He was an innovator in the concept of bundling, of getting donors to get together and raise money for a particular candidate or particular cause. But Matt was always known as kind of Jack's guy. You know, if you needed something done and you couldn't get to Jack right away, say, hey, reach out to Matt. Oh, yeah, that's Jack's guy. He'll get it done. And Matt really learned at the altar of Jack Oliver for many years. And now we're at the point, Brad, I bring this up because Matt's in his early 40s now. I know he's a few years younger than me. We're at the age now where young men and young women are looking at Matt Jessee the way that a lot of us youngsters in the 90s and 2000s looked at Jack Oliver. And it's just a great story to me, Brad, as highlighted by Politico. It's just a great story of how someone can have a long, successful run and then be able to come home to Missouri. And Matt's the kind of guy – this is the final thing, and then I'll stop putting him over, to use a pro wrestling term. I'll stop putting Matt Jessee over. But it's a great excuse me, it's a great example of somebody who you can do a lot of good in the policy arena, and you can do a lot of good in the philanthropic region and not be a habitual glad-hander. Brad, you could sit next to Matt at a Chamber of Commerce meeting or at a kid's soccer game, and you wouldn't know that you were talking to a VIP. You wouldn't know that you were talking to somebody who was very important. You would just think you were talking to another humble suburban dad. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, this is a local boy done good story. You can check out, as always, not only the link, Brad, but a paywall-free link on my website today. So cheers to Matt Jessee. It really is a local boy done very good and coming back home to the St. Louis area.
Was that steak good, by the way?
So the joke is that he bought me a steak?
Yeah, I was going to say, yes. The steak that you had with Matt Jessee the other night, was that a good steak?
I did not get a steak from. I probably would have ordered salmon, or maybe the Cajun pasta. I don't know.
Okay, John, here's one for you. You're Mr. Stock Market. Where is the stock traded for American Water?
I don't know. I've never owned Missouri American Water.
Well, it's the parent company is just American Water. It's on the New York Stock Exchange's AWK, the DJUA. It is a DJUA component, and it's in the S&P 500. And the company is 138 years old, started by Mr. James S. Kuhn, and it's headquartered in Camden, New Jersey. So
there we go. I like that. Those are good. By the way, if folks don't want to buy stock and individual utilities, you can buy the ETF, and the ticker symbol is XLU.
Now, explain to everybody what an ETF is.
In the olden days, if you wanted to buy shares in utilities, which, by the way, not financial advice, but utilities are the number one asset in my portfolio right now, Brad. Point of fact, this is not financial advice. But it used to be that you'd have to go out and buy shares of Ameren, AEE, or shares of Spire, ticker symbol SR. But today you can buy what's called an exchange-traded fund. Just think of it as a basket. So you can buy a basket of utility stocks by purchasing. You could buy $1,000 worth, you could buy 10 grand, you could buy $100 worth of XLU as the ticker. And that way you get a tiny little piece of the major utilities. You think you want to buy a little Con Ed, you want to buy a little Ameren. You look at your Spire bill this winter and you think, oh my God, why am I sending them so much money? Well, you own a little piece of SR. So anyway, I'm long XLU. It's the largest single stock asset in my portfolio. This is not financial advice. But anyway, I think XLU is up 13% in the last 6 weeks, Brad. This is not financial advice. Shout out to Hedgeye, because I wouldn't know any of this if it wasn't for Hedgeye. But yeah, or you can go to your local strip mall and have them give you a state school handout that says, at your age, you should be 60% bonds. I don't know. That's what the formula says. XLU up 13% in 6 weeks. I'll take it, Brad.
That information is all courtesy of Rex Sinkfield, who John has a thing for, because Rex Sinkfield is the guy who essentially, wasn't he behind the ETFs, or was he just behind the what do you call it?
He was just behind the chess museum, Brad.
No. What his claim to fame was, he started what? It wasn't the ETFs. What's the other one I'm looking for? Where, you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, you don't know the deal with Rex Sinkfield? How he made all his money?
No.
He's the guy that started I want to call aggregate trading, the ETF kind of stuff. The what do you call it? Like the spiders.
I don't know if he started. I don't know if he started ETFs, but maybe you could look it up over break, Brad.
Well, he did something like that. That's why he's got billions of dollars.
Okay, you know what? This is from the same guy that was disparaging hedge funds this week.
I was not disparaging hedge funds. I was just saying that's what happens when you have companies that once again, I'm worried about Southwest Airlines. The heritage.
Yeah, strip the culture out, make them more profitable,
right.
And then that way the employee shareholders and share owners can do more. What a terrible thing.
And
why make companies more profitable? Let's run a route to Oklahoma City with 4 people on the plane so Brad Hildebrand doesn't have to get his ass in a car and drive.
And the customers get sucky service.
I know. Let's complain about the rules when we're in our 60s and we should know better. You need to hire a lobbyist. Maybe go to Bryan Cave, Leighton Posner. Somebody's filling Matt and Jesse's job. Maybe you can hire them, Brad.
Did they change the sign on the building down there? Did they put those other two dudes' names on the sign? It used to be just Bryan Cave. Aren't they the ones that have on the old mercantile building downtown? Don't they have or which law firm am I thinking about?
No, it's just a mural. It's a Tara Jones now.
Okay, we have to take a break. We're way behind. It's John's fault.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?